So, voter ID laws have come back up to the surface again now that Trump is trying to pass the SAVE Act, which requires proof of citizenship and IDs and so forth to be able to vote. Now, naturally, we can quibble about the details, and there's some elements of the SAVE Act that I'm actually not a big fan of and so forth. But if someone were to simply ask me, look, on a basic level, should somebody have to give an ID or provide a proof of citizenship in order to be able to vote? The answer would obviously be, duh, of course, right? We don't want people that aren't citizens of the country voting on the people that are supposed to be representing the citizens of that country. So that's just me. It seems like absolute common sense to every normal country out there. It is common sense. But what do most Americans think about this?
83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to be able to vote.
What about by party? What's the party breakdown?
Yeah, normally you might expect, hey, there'd be a big divide by party with Republicans really for it and Democrats really against it. But not really here. I mean, just take a look here. Favor photo ID to vote. You got 95% of Republicans, pretty much all of them, but even 71% of Democrats. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country.
Of all the issues that Americans are deeply divided on, there's basically two issues that all Americans, regardless of where they stand on the political spectrum, agree. One of them is UFOs. We all want UFO disclosure. We want to know what the hell's going on with the aliens. And voter ID laws. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party has been completely overtaken by radicals, and they've staked their entire political strategy on opposing anything that Donald Trump wants to get done, because Trump is Hitler, and they can't be seen to support Hitler, or anything that simply just makes sense. So why are Democrats so opposed to this?
83% of the American people, including a majority of Democrats, support voter ID laws.
Yeah, the voter ID laws that, first, each state can have its own voter ID laws, and some do and some don't. But secondly, what they are proposing in this so-called SAVE Act is like Jim Crow 2.0. They make it so hard to get any kind of voter ID that more than 20 million legitimate people, mainly poorer people and people of color, will not be able to vote under this law. We will not let it pass in the Senate. We are fighting it tooth and nail. It's an outrageous proposal that is, that shows the sort of political bias of the MAGA right. They don't want poor people to vote. They don't want people of color to vote because they often don't vote for them.
Ah, yes, shocking. We, those evil racists on the MAGA side, don't want 20 million Americans to be able to vote. We don't want poor people voting, and we especially don't want people of color voting. Yes, Chuck, that's exactly what it is. After all this time, they've been using this tactic of labeling anybody that disagrees with them as a racist, sexist, bigoted homophobe who hates poor people for so long. It's amazing to me how many people still buy into this bullshit. Oh man. Well, here's another representative out of Georgia who seems to feel the same way.
Where in the words of the administration itself, it was a cabinet official in the White House herself who said that we just want to make sure that, quote, the right people are voting. That was the argument in the 1960s. And had those who wanted to make sure that the, quote, right people were voting, had they prevailed, I would not be standing here today. And they put up the SAVE Act arguing that they want to make sure that it's only Americans who are voting, but they have demonstrated, they have provided no evidence that voter fraud is a real thing through voter identification. We know that this will disenfranchise thousands, if not millions, of Americans. Donald Trump said that this is his number one priority, and so it begs the question, why is this his number one priority? With all the things going on in our country, why is this the main thing that he feels he must get done?
Okay, so according to him, they provided no evidence that voter fraud is a real thing. Okay, but we know that this will disenfranchise thousands or millions of voters. So why would this be Trump's number one priority to get done? Well, for starters, instead of assuming that it's because he wants to keep poor and black and brown people from being able to vote, which is your standard go-to bullshit line, how about it's the one issue that Americans overwhelmingly agree on? So how about that for a crazy idea? The only people that actually do disagree on this are the race-baiting shitbags like you that will stop at nothing to keep the racial divide thriving within this country, and will stop at nothing to secure your strategy of using immigration in order to get the votes that you guys will need to retain power in the future. Because you know that your ideas have become so batshit crazy that they're being rejected by the native population, so you can no longer rely on them anymore, so you have to switch now to immigration in order to get the votes. So, whatever. Putting that aside, I remember back in 2008, Georgia, or I believe it's 2005 actually, Georgia, your home state, passed a bunch of strict voter ID laws. And the same conversation transpired back then. There was an uproar and there was all this talk about how this is going to disenfranchise millions of marginalized voters. The voter ID laws are racist. Republicans are racist. This is going to be Jim Crow 2.0 all over again. All the same shit was said back then as the same stuff that they're saying now. So what actually wound up happening as a result of these strict, evil, racist voter ID laws in 2008? The American Civil Liberties Union has been one of the staunchest opponents of voter ID laws, has repeatedly published information suggesting that the laws would suppress voting. But the voter suppression argument has not always found to be accurate. A study in Georgia on election data conducted by the Atlantic Journal found that participation among black voters rose 44% from 2006 before the law was implemented until 2010. For Hispanics, the increase was 67%. For whites, 12%. So, the claim, voter turnout for some groups in the 2008 presidential election was far greater than it should have been demographically. True. We call these poll taxes, Attorney General Holder said to the NAACP. They equate the Texas new photo law instances post-slavery in which blacks had to pay a tax or pass a test in order to vote. Nonsense, says the proponents. In 2004, 76% of black women, 66% of black men registered in Georgia, cast ballots in that year's election, according to the data we found on Georgia's Secretary of State's website. In 2008, an estimated 80% of black women and 70% of black men registered to vote in Georgia in the November presidential election. In 2004, black voters made up 24%. In 2008, they were 30%. So, the claim, voter ID laws make it complicated and expensive to get an ID, essentially instituting a modern-day poll tax. Bullshit. In other words, all the disenfranchised voters, their numbers actually increased significantly after implementing these evil racist voter ID laws that are meant to keep black and brown and poor people from voting. So, progressives, of course, are the good guys, right? They're the anti-racists. So, how do they feel about voter ID laws?
Opinion on voter ID laws?
Yeah, they're usually pretty racist and they're bad.
I think voter ID laws are
Very
a way
racist.
to perpetuate racism.
Would you go as far as to say those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely.
Tell us how.
Because they're less likely to have state IDs.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs you do over the internet. Does that also make it difficult for black people in particular?
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed.
I also think there's a repression of black voting with how if you're a convicted felon, you're not allowed to vote and everything. And when you look at swing states like Florida, that's a huge population of the African Americans.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask black people their thoughts on what you just heard.
Let's see what they think about
Do you have ID normally? You carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID?
Oh, because they're retards.
Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so we know what we need to carry around.
Why would they say that?
Everybody that I know have ID. That's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, an ID.
Do you know any black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
What is this, some type of trick candy camera?
I know, right?
That's the only thing I brought with me.
Those are legit IDs. I heard a lot also that black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
Really?
What does that say to you?
I know it's that. It's on 25th Street.
Do you know where the DMV is around you?
It's on 125th Street and 3rd Avenue, I believe.
You know how to get there?
Yeah.
Would you have a problem getting there if you had to get there?
No.
I know these sound like silly questions. You know how to get to DMV?
Of course.
You know where it is?
Yes.
You can get there?
Uh-huh.
No problem.
No problem.
Just checking.
Okay.
And I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet, can't figure out how to use the internet.
That's just stupidity, honestly. Everybody has access to the internet. Even a little kid could figure out how to work the internet.
I had access to
not
the
black
internet
people.
for years.
You know how to use it properly, right?
Exactly. I do it at work. So, of course, I know how to use it. My kids know how to use it. They all have iPads, iPods, whatever.
Your phone has data? You can access the internet
Unlimited.
with unlimited data.
I use my phone as a hotspot.
What does that say to you for the people who have this perception of black people?
They're pretty much ignorant. That's what my thought process was.
I just think that's ignorant. Ignorant.
Ignorant. That's the
Very,
word I hear
very
a lot.
ignorant.
Ignorant.
It's very, very ignorant.
Does it sound racist for somebody to say that?
I think it is a little racist because, you're putting people in a category and you have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, not
Maybe a little
progressives.
bit
They don't do
racist
that.
in it, but like I said, I think it's more stupidity and ignorance.
You judging somebody, but you judging them because they black, saying that they don't got it.
What people are
Yep.
they talking to?
That's exactly what they're
Who are
doing.
these people talking to?
Do you have a problem that if you go to vote,
White
they
progressives,
say,
that's
please
all.
see your ID to make
Those
sure
are the
you
only
are who you
people
say
that they
you are?
talk to are white
Are you
progressives.
Showing my ID.
You got no problem with that?
Nope.
Would you have a problem
Love
if when you
showing
go to
ID.
vote, if they say, can we please just see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are? Do you have an issue with that?
No.
Would you have a problem if there was a rule where you had to show your ID in order to vote?
I don't think so. No.
Would you have an issue
No,
if there
nobody
was a
cares.
rule saying you got to show your ID before you vote?
Nah.
Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what is called the soft bigotry of low expectations. Liberals will proudly proclaim that black people are too stupid to be able to figure out how to get online, too poor to be able to afford their cell phone bills, or too just generally retarded and incompetent to be able to manage the task of going to their local DMV and getting an ID before they can vote. They will say these things without batting an eye, without having the faintest clue, having absolutely no idea how incredibly condescending and racist it is for them to make those claims. That thought never even crosses their minds. Their lack of self-awareness is absolutely astounding. And then they have the audacity to call us the racists. I think it was Malcolm X who once said something to the effect that the white liberal is the most evil and dangerous person out there, basically. I would say that generally speaking, the progressive or liberal mindset of, if you're a minority, then you're a victim of a racist society, a racist system set up by evil white supremacists that have built that system to keep you down and keep you trapped in this cycle of poverty and so forth. That minorities have no agency on their own lives. So why would you even bother trying to make good decisions? You're fucked anyways. The only solution then is, of course, to have a revolution where you stand up and just burn down the entire system. Then you can rise up from the ashes of slavery. But here's where I disagree with Malcolm X. I don't actually think that leftists and progressives, I don't think that they're evil. For the most part, I think the overwhelming vast majority of them have good intentions. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. One of the most fundamental differences between conservatives and liberals is that conservatives think liberals are wrong because they're misguided. Liberals think conservatives are wrong because they're evil. And why would I bother listening to the perspective or the ideas from somebody that is fundamentally a bad person? I think that the vast majority of them have noble intentions. In fact, I know that they do.
Because I used to be one.
Unfortunately, if you're a progressive that is so bold to extend an olive branch to somebody on the other side and try to find some common ground, you will be absolutely crucified as a traitor to the cause on your side. You'll be banned, cast out of your social group, and you'll be thrown right in the bucket of deplorables like the rest of them like that. So much for being on the side that prides themselves on not being judgmental and supposedly values diversity and compassion. Anyways, that's all for today, guys. Hope you liked the video. Please share it, subscribe to the channel. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know if you think I'm crazy or whether or not you like what I have to say, hated what I say, just let me know. And if you want to see another one, check this one out.